The morning air hung heavy over the Warner Brothers lot. It was 1992, and production on Unforgiven had been running like clockwork for weeks. Cast and crew had grown accustomed to the rhythm, first positions by 7 sharp, cameras rolling minutes later, lunch precisely at noon. Then, on this particular morning, someone decided the rules didn't apply to them. According to several crew members who were present that day, the lead actor scheduled for the morning's crucial scene was nowhere to be found. 7 o'clock passed. 7:15. 7:30. The crew stood ready, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment powered up, dozens of professionals waiting. In the director's chair sat Clint Eastwood, watching the space where his actor should have been. He didn't pace. He didn't raise his voice. He simply sat there, still as stone, while the production bled money with each passing minute. Those who worked closely with Eastwood over the decades understood something fundamental about the man. He treated filmmaking like a military operation, not because he enjoyed authority, but because he respected other people's time and money. Having directed over 30 films by that point in his career, Eastwood had developed a reputation that preceded him onto every set. He arrived before anyone else. He knew every line, every shot, every detail. Most importantly, he finished on time and under budget, a rarity in an industry famous for excess. The stories about his efficiency had become Hollywood legend. On the bridges of Madison County, witnesses recalled, he'd wrapped principal photography 2 weeks ahead of schedule. During Bird, he'd reportedly captured complex jazz sequences in single takes that other directors would have spent days perfecting. But this efficiency wasn't born from rushing or cutting corners. Those familiar with his methods described it differently. Eastwood simply didn't tolerate waste. Not of time, not of money, not of effort. Back on the Unforgiven set that morning, the tension grew thicker with each minute. The missing actor, a rising star with considerable talent, but, according to multiple accounts from the production, an ego that had been growing with each successful film, finally appeared at 8:15, over an hour late. Those present described how he strolled onto set with a casual confidence, coffee in hand, offering a breezy apology about traffic. The entire set held its breath. Everyone knew Eastwood's reputation. They'd heard the stories. There was the time, industry veterans recalled, when he'd replaced a cinematographer mid-production for consistently showing up 10 minutes late. Another account described how he'd removed a producer from a film for undermining the shooting schedule. These weren't acts of cruelty or power plays. Those who witnessed such moments understood them as simple mathematics. Every minute wasted was multiplied by every person waiting. Disrespect for the schedule was disrespect for everyone involved. But on this morning, Eastwood did something unexpected. He stood up slowly from his director's chair, walked over to the actor, and, according to those who were close enough to hear, said simply, "We started at 7. Then he turned to his assistant director and called for the next setup, one that didn't include the tardy actor. The story of what followed varies depending on who tells it, but the core remains consistent among those who were there. Eastwood continued shooting around the absent actor for the entire morning. Every scene that could be filmed without him was filmed. When lunchtime arrived precisely at noon, Eastwood dismissed the crew as usual. The actor, witnesses recalled, spent those hours sitting in his trailer, initially confident that this was temporary, then gradually understanding that something fundamental had shifted. After lunch, production resumed. The actor was back in position early this time, but Eastwood had made his point without raising his voice, without a confrontation, without a single wasted word. Those familiar with the production reported that the actor was never late again during the remaining weeks of filming. More importantly, word of the incident traveled through the production like wildfire. The message was clear. This set ran on precision, and that precision was non-negotiable. This wasn't the only time Eastwood's approach to discipline created defining moments on his sets. During the production of Mystic River, crew members described a situation with a young supporting actor who repeatedly questioned the blocking and suggested improvements to scenes that had already been meticulously planned. The first time, witnesses said, Eastwood listened patiently. The second time, he nodded and continued with the original plan. The third time, according to those present, Eastwood called a brief halt to filming. What followed became another piece of the Eastwood mythology. Rather than berate the actor or engage in a power struggle, Eastwood reportedly pulled up a chair and sat down with him privately. For 10 minutes, no more, no less, he explained how every department had prepared for weeks based on specific decisions, how the cinematographer had lit the scene based on predetermined movements, how the sound department had positioned equipment, how questioning these decisions on the day wasn't creative collaboration. It was sabotage of hundreds of hours of work by dozens of professionals. The conversation, those who overheard portions of it recalled, wasn't harsh or demeaning. It was educational. When they returned to filming, the young actor hit his marks perfectly and delivered what many considered one of the best performances in the film. Years later, that same actor would credit that 10-minute conversation with teaching him more about professional filmmaking than years of acting classes. These moments revealed something essential about Eastwood's leadership style. He didn't rule through fear or intimidation. Those who worked with him repeatedly described an atmosphere of calm professionalism rather than tyranny. The discipline came not from external pressure but from a shared understanding of excellence. Everyone on an Eastwood set understood they were part of a machine that functioned with rare precision, and that precision benefited everyone, from the biggest star to the newest production assistant. The financial implications were significant. While other productions routinely ran over budget by millions, Eastwood's films came in under budget so consistently that studios began building this expectation into their contracts with him. This wasn't just about saving money. It was about respect. Every dollar saved was a dollar that could go toward the next project, toward hiring more crew, toward taking creative risks that bloated productions couldn't afford. But perhaps the most telling aspect of Eastwood's approach was what happened to those who challenged it. The actor who had been late to Unforgiven went on to have a successful career, but according to industry insiders, he was never hired for another Eastwood film. This wasn't vindictiveness, it was simply practical. Why invite disruption into a system that functioned perfectly without it? Other directors, hearing about the incident through Hollywood's informal network, reportedly began implementing similar standards on their own sets. The ripple effects extended beyond individual careers. Cinematographers who had worked with Eastwood became known for their efficiency. Assistant directors trained on his sets were sought after for their ability to maintain schedules. Actors who had experienced his methods carried those lessons to other productions. In this way, Eastwood's influence on Hollywood's working culture extended far beyond his own films. One particularly illuminating story, shared by multiple veterans of his productions, involved a moment during the filming of Gran Torino. A key scene required precise coordination between multiple departments, stunts, special effects, and a large crowd of extras. The setup was complex and expensive. Other directors might have scheduled an entire day for such a scene, allowing for multiple takes and inevitable delays. Eastwood, according to those present, scheduled 3 hours. When a technical problem arose with one of the special effects rigs, the kind of issue that typically derails an entire day's shooting, witnesses described Eastwood's response. He didn't panic. He didn't berate the technicians. He simply asked how long the fix would take. 45 minutes, came the answer. Eastwood nodded, then turned to his assistant director and rearranged the shooting order on the spot, filming every possible element that didn't require the broken rig. By the time the technicians had completed their repairs, Eastwood had captured half the scene from angles that didn't require the effect. When the rig was fixed, he completed the sequence in a single take. The entire scene was finished 20 minutes ahead of schedule. This kind of adaptability within a framework of discipline became Eastwood's trademark. Rules were absolute until they interfered with efficiency. at which point creative solutions emerged. But these solutions never involved compromising the core principles: respect for time, money, and the collaborative effort of filmmaking. The lessons from Eastwood's sets extended beyond Hollywood. Business schools began studying his production methods as examples of efficient project management. Military academies referenced his leadership style: firm but fair, demanding but not demeaning. The principle was universal. Excellence comes from discipline, and discipline comes from respect. Respect for the work, respect for the process, and above all, respect for the people who make it possible. Those who witnessed Eastwood's methods firsthand often spoke about the paradox at the heart of his approach. By maintaining such strict discipline, he actually created more freedom. When everyone knew exactly what was expected and when, creativity could flourish within those boundaries. Actors felt secure enough to take risks because they knew the technical foundation was solid. Cinematographers could experiment because they had extra time saved from efficient operations. Writers saw their words brought to life exactly as intended because there was no room for ego-driven alterations on set. The morning that began with an actor's tardiness on Unforgiven became a teaching moment that resonated through decades of filmmaking. It demonstrated that true authority doesn't need to shout. Real leadership doesn't require dramatic confrontations. Sometimes the most powerful statement is made in silence, in the quiet refusal to accept anything less than professional excellence. Years later, when asked about his approach to directing, Eastwood would often deflect with characteristic minimalism. But those who had been there, who had witnessed these moments of quiet authority, understood the deeper truth. In an industry built on ego and excess, he had carved out a space where the work came first, where time was precious, and where every person's contribution was valued enough to be protected by iron discipline. The lesson was clear: whether you were making movies or building houses, writing code or running a restaurant, excellence isn't about grand gestures or dramatic stands. It's about showing up on time, every time. It's about respecting the collective effort. It's about understanding that when you waste someone's time, you're stealing something that can never be returned. And sometimes, the most profound impact comes not from what you say when someone breaks the rules, but from the quiet authority with which you simply continue doing things the right way. In Hollywood, where mythology often overshadows reality, the stories about Clint Eastwood's sets carried unusual weight, because they were, above all, believable. They spoke to something everyone who had ever worked on a team understood: the rare and precious experience of being part of something that actually functioned the way it was supposed to, where promises were kept, schedules were met, and respect was both demanded and earned. In an industry of beautiful chaos, Eastwood had created something almost unheard of: predictable excellence. That morning on the Unforgiven set, when the cameras finally rolled and the absent actor delivered his lines with newfound punctuality, something larger was being filmed than just another Western. It was a masterclass in leadership, captured not in the footage, but in the memories of those who witnessed it. And like all the best lessons, it was taught not through words, but through actions, not through drama, but through the quiet, unyielding commitment to doing things right.